Educational GMAT. Your partner in your GMAT journey.
Okay, so we start with critical reasoning now. The thing is, this is going to be not an easy session. But then I just wanted to make sure that you get some reasonable sense in terms of what you can expect in critical reasoning. So what we'll do is, guys, let's start with the very important distinction between necessary and sufficient conditions. Distinction between necessary and sufficient conditions. What's a necessary condition? A necessary condition is required for something else to happen, but it does not guarantee that something else happens. In other words, if I were to summarize, necessary conditions state a requirement for a goal. That's a necessary condition for you. On the other hand, what's a sufficient condition? A sufficient condition guarantees the truth of another condition, but is not necessary for that condition to happen. In other words, sufficient conditions guarantee the result. Necessary conditions state a requirement for a goal, while sufficient conditions guarantee the result. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to present you with certain conditions and I'll ask you to identify whether the condition presented is it necessary or sufficient. Ready for the exercise? All right. Okay, this is the first condition for you. To get 700 plus on GMAT, you have to appear in GMAT exam. Now tell me, appear in GMAT exam. Is it a necessary or a sufficient condition to achieve this goal? Think about it. Think about it. No, no hurry. Yes. Appear in GMAT, is that a necessary condition or a sufficient condition to get 700 plus? Very nice. Why necessary? Very nice. Very nice. Appearing in GMAT is required to get 700 plus on GMAT, and hence it is necessary. But merely appearing in GMAT does not guarantee that you get 700 plus, and hence it is not sufficient. Okay. You can board a flight to go to Delhi from Bangalore. Tell me, boarding a flight, is that a necessary or a sufficient condition to achieve this goal? Boarding a flight, is that a necessary or a sufficient condition to go to Delhi from Bangalore?
I think it's a necessary condition.
Looks like there's no consensus. Sufficient. Why is it sufficient? Well, it is sufficient because if you board a flight, obviously guaranteed you can go to Delhi from Bangalore. Why is it not necessary? As Jay rightly pointed out, because if you have to go to Delhi from Bangalore, boarding a flight is not a requirement, because you can go to Delhi from Bangalore by train or theoretically by road as well. Rishi, is this clear?
Yes, yes.
Okay. People require air to live. Now tell me, requirement of air, is that a necessary or a sufficient condition to achieve this goal? Requirement of air. Well, that's a necessary condition. Why necessary? Require, right? So yeah, air is a requirement to live. Why is it not sufficient? By the way, why is it not sufficient? Because air alone does not guarantee that you live. You obviously need food, water, and so on. Okay. You must work hard to score high on GMAT. Tell me, working hard, is that a necessary or a sufficient condition to achieve this goal? Yes, guys. All right, very nice. Why? Because the question says, right, the statement says you must work hard, which means according to this statement, working hard is a requirement to score high on GMAT. But this statement itself definitely does not claim that if you work hard, it will guarantee that you score high on GMAT. It does not claim that. Okay. Now, this would require you to have some knowledge of table tennis. In table tennis, if the ball does not hit the table, the player loses the point. So tell me, ball not hitting the table, is that a necessary or a sufficient condition to lose the point? Very nice. Why sufficient? Because the moment the ball does, so I hit the ball and the ball does not hit the table, it clearly guarantees that I lose a point, right? Why is it not necessary? Because losing the point, right? Ball not hitting the table is not a requirement. For example, I hit the ball may hit the table, but if it hits the table in my court, I still lose a point. So it's not a requirement. Okay. My car needs fuel in order to run. Tell me, fuel, is that a necessary or a sufficient condition for the car to run? What do you guys think?
Necessary.
All right, very nice. Why necessary? Because fuel is a requirement for the car to run. Why is it not sufficient? Because fuel alone does not guarantee that the car runs. Obviously, it needs a well-functioning engine, and in India, at least, there is a driver needed as well. Okay. Whenever I do yoga, I feel calm. So now tell me, yoga, is that a necessary or a sufficient condition to feel calm? What do you guys think? According to this sentence, obviously. All right. Very nice. So you guys almost had 100% hit rate. Why is it sufficient? Because as per this statement, yoga is guaranteeing that I feel calm. Why is it not a necessary condition? Because this does not, yeah. Why is it not a necessary condition? Anyone? Why is it not a necessary condition? Absolutely. No, no. What you are answering is, why is this a sufficient condition? My question was, why is it not a necessary condition? And this is where Bharat is absolutely correct, because this does not preclude the possibility, prevent the possibility that I may feel calm through other ways as well. Right. So, for example, through shopping or through physical exercise. Right. So, which means yoga, as per the statement, is not a requirement for me to feel calm. So there what we are saying is, whenever I do yoga, I feel calm. According to this statement, do you agree? Again, according to this statement, do you agree that yoga guarantees that I feel calm? Since yoga is very nice, since yoga is guaranteeing, which means that it's a sufficient condition. Why is it not necessary? Because this statement does not preclude or prevent the condition that I may feel calm because of due to some other reasons as well. For example, physical exercise may make me feel calm, or shopping may make me feel calm. For that reason, yoga is not an absolute requirement for me to feel calm, and that's the reason it's not necessary. Clear, guys? We are doing well. A few more slides in this tricky topic. Okay. Now, this is a very, very important slide. What we'll be discussing here is, how do we depict necessary and sufficient conditions, or how do we translate necessary and sufficient conditions into logical relationships? And what are logical relationships? By the way, this is how logical relationships are depicted. If X, then Y. This is how logical relationships are depicted. So friends, in logical relationships, sufficient conditions are always depicted as if X, then Y, while necessary conditions are depicted as, what is this? Can someone tell? Not. Very nice. So please do remember that it's a very standard notation. This stands for not in logical relationships. So necessary conditions are expressed as if not X, then not Y. Clear? Now what I'm going to do is the very same conditions, in fact, that we covered on the last slide, we'll be reconsidering them on this slide, but we'll go a step further and depict those conditions as logical relationships. All right. Now, please do remember that here as well as here, X is the cause and Y is the effect. Please remember this. Okay. All right. Now, let's start with this. This was the first condition, if you remember, that we discussed on the last slide. To get 700 plus on GMAT, you have to appear in the GMAT exam. First of all, can you tell me what's the cause here and what's the effect? What's the cause? Appear in GMAT is the cause, clearly. And this is the effect. We identified this as necessary. Since this is necessary, how would it be expressed as? Notice necessary conditions are expressed as this, right? So now can someone tell me, we've given very nice, right? If this does not, right? So if a person does not appear in GMAT, then the person cannot score 700 plus on GMAT. All right. Okay. You can board a flight to go to Delhi from Bangalore. I think this should be easy. What's the cause here? Board a flight. And what's the effect? Yeah, go to Delhi from Bangalore. This boarding a flight, on the last slide, we identified this as a sufficient condition. Since it's a sufficient condition, how would this be expressed as? So can you tell me now, how would this be expressed as logically? Very nice. Board a flight straight away, then go to Delhi from Bangalore.
Actually, isn't this is a bit confusing when you say, especially for this example, shouldn't it be board a flight uh, in Bangalore to Delhi and the effect will be go to Delhi? Because you can always say board a flight, could be any flight, right? You could
Oh
still
yeah, yeah,
say,
yeah, yeah. Agree. Completely agree with that. Completely
yeah,
agree with that. Completely agree with that. So yeah. So I think I should make it clear, and a very logical point, by the way. I should make it clear that when we are saying board a flight, what I
yeah,
mean is board a flight that goes to Delhi from Bangalore.
yes,
No, doesn't mean board
yeah,
any flight. Yes.
yeah. That's
Agreed.
how you can say it's sufficient.
Sorry.
That's how we can confirm it's sufficient if we say it like that.
Agree. Agree. Completely agree.
Yeah.
So, Anish, what was your point? Yeah, I mean, but what Aarti is saying, she does have a point that perhaps the sentence should have been clearer, that this is essentially a Bangalore Delhi flight and not any flight. That's all. It's not incorrect, but I'm saying that, yeah, that is, you could consider this assumption that I'm making to be very evident, but it's still an assumption. Yes. Okay. People require air to live. So now, first of all, can you tell me what's the cause here? Air. And what's the effect? Live. And we identified this as a necessary condition. And as we've just discussed, necessary conditions are expressed in this form. So now can you quickly transform this into a logical relationship? Very nice. Very nice. If a person does not have access to air, then that person cannot live. Clear? Correct. Whether, however, I would say that should it be expressed in this form or in this form, as I said, depends upon whether the condition itself is necessary or sufficient, which is an exercise that we did on the last slide. But then just wait for a couple of slides. We'll also be seeing that how perhaps on the basis of the sentence structure itself, we can figure out whether the condition is necessary or sufficient. Just wait for a couple of slides. You must work hard to score high on GMAT. So I think this should be easy now. What's the cause here? Working hard. And what's the effect? High score. And we identified working hard as a necessary condition to score high. Since it's a necessary condition, can you quickly now tell me how do we express it in a logical relationship? Very nice, Andrews. If you do not work hard, then you cannot score high on GMAT. The table tennis example, if the ball does not hit the table, the player loses the point. What's the cause here? Does not, very nice, but ball does not hit the table is the cause. Point loss is the effect of that. And we identified this as a sufficient condition. Since this was identified as a sufficient condition, how would we express it as? Ball not hit in the table, then the player losing a point. My car needs fuel in order to run. Quickly tell me what's the cause here? Fuel. And what is the effect? Running. And we identified fuel as necessary for the car to run. Since it's a necessary condition, again, quickly tell me how would this be depicted as a logical relationship?
If
Very
there is
nice.
no fuel,
Very nice.
you
If there
can't
is
run.
no fuel, then the car cannot run. And finally, whenever I do yoga, I feel calm. Easy one. What's the cause here? Yoga. What's the effect? Feeling calm. Since we identified yoga as a sufficient condition to feel calm, so how would it be expressed as? Very nice. Whenever I do yoga, I feel calm. So, oh, by the way, in all these statements, this symbol is a mark of 100% guarantee. It's not even 99.99, guys. It's 100% guarantee. Now read this. If I do not appear in GMAT, 100% I cannot score 700 plus on GMAT. If I board a flight, 100% I'll be able to go to Delhi from Bangalore. If I do not have access to air, 100% I cannot live, and so on. So it doesn't matter whether we are talking about a necessary or a sufficient condition. This symbol will always be a mark of 100% guarantee. And this is something that we've already seen, that cause, right, X, cause is always on the left-hand side, effect is always on the right-hand side. Are we clear? All right, so you've done very well so far. Just a couple of more slides, tricky slides for the day. Now, what we are suggesting or what we're discussing here is that how do logical relationships work? Okay, so in fact, let me explain this to you. Given this relationship, what is this relationship? If X, then Y. If this is true, then friends, the contrapositive of this relationship will also be true. And how do you express contrapositive? If not Y, then not X. This will also be true. Whenever a relationship, so this is called the contrapositive. Now, GMAT obviously doesn't care what it's called, but I'll be using this term for that reason. I just want you to be comfortable. Whenever a relationship is true, the contrapositive will always be true. Let me see if you got it. Okay, if X then Y, suppose this is given to you, then can you tell me what will also be mechanically true based on this? The contrapositive. And what will be the contrapositive? If not Y, then not X. Okay. Suppose that this is given to be true. If X, then not Y. Suppose this is given to be true. Now, whenever relationship is true, what is also mechanically true? The contrapositive. Can you tell me what will be the contrapositive of this? Excellent. If Y, then not X will also be true. See, the way you construct contrapositive is actually quite mechanical. Whatever is on the right, bring it to the left. Whatever is on the left, bring it to the right. If it's a plus, make it negative. If it's a negative, make it plus. Okay. So this we've arrived at. Similarly, we've arrived at this. Let's look at other combinations. If not X, then Y. Suppose this is given to be true. What will be the contrapositive that will also be true? Sorry?
If
Very
not
nice.
Y, X.
Yes, very nice. If not Y, then X. Okay. If not X, then not Y. Suppose this is given to be true. What will be the contrapositive for this, which will also be true? If Y, then X. So whenever relationship is true, its contrapositive is always true. All right. Okay. Now, one last thing before we progress. If this is given to you as true, then we've already discussed the contrapositive that will also be true would be this. But from this relationship, while you can conclude this, but from this original relationship, you cannot conclude if not X, then not Y. So this is something that you cannot conclude. All right. And this is what we are saying, that given a relationship, its contrapositive will always be true. But from this relationship, you cannot conclude if not X, then not Y. Okay. Now, this is also something that we already discussed. If this is given to us as true, what will be the contrapositive that will also be true? If X, then Y. Right? Again, making a contrapositive, as I said, quite mechanical. Whatever is on the right, bring it to the left. Whatever is on the left, bring it to the right. Make both these negatives positives. If it's a negative, turns positive. If it's a positive, turns negative. Let's take an example, in fact, that we discussed on the last slide. How do you read this? Can someone read it for me? Very nice. If a person does not appear in GMAT, then definitely, remember, this is a mark of 100% guarantee. Then it's 100% sure that the person cannot score 700 plus on GMAT. Now, given this relationship, which is true, contrapositive will always be true. Can someone tell me what will be the contrapositive of this? Very nice. If a person has scored 700 plus on GMAT, it means that 100% that person has appeared in GMAT. Correct? So this is very true based upon the contrapositive. But what can we remember? This is true. What can we not conclude? Remember, from this, we cannot conclude this. Similarly, from this, we cannot conclude this. So what can we not conclude? That if a person has not scored 700 plus on GMAT, it means that the person has not appeared on the GMAT exam. We cannot conclude. And I think all of us know this from common sense also, that it's possible for a person to have appeared in GMAT but not scored a 700 plus. And hence, this is something that you cannot conclude. All right. One last slide, guys, for the theory part, and then we'll be done with theory, then we'll do some practice. Okay. Coming back to, in fact, the discussion I was having with Jay, looking at the conditional statement itself would give you a very decent clue in terms of whether the statement itself is talking about a necessary condition or a sufficient condition. So for example, if the statement is like this, if X, then Y, or Y if X, this represents a sufficient condition. All right. An example, I use an umbrella if it is raining. Now, the last thing that I want you guys to do is to get confused in terms of what is X, what is Y. We already settled it. Cause will always be X and effect will be Y. So can you quickly tell me what is the cause here? rain is the cause, right? Then you use effect is umbrella, correct? So rain is the cause and effect is umbrella. Since it's a sufficient condition, and do you remember how are sufficient conditions expressed as? If X then Y, correct? So which means if it is raining, then I will use an umbrella. Now, the moment you get this condition, arriving at this condition is mechanical. Why is it mechanical? Because it's just a contrapositive. And remember, irrespective of whether we are talking about a necessary or a sufficient condition, the contrapositive is always correct. So from this relationship, we arrive at the contrapositive. And can someone read it for me? How do you interpret this contrapositive? If a person is not using an umbrella, it means that it is not raining. Clear? All right. The statement which says X causes Y is again a sufficient condition. For example, lower interest rates cause inflation is a sufficient condition. And I think it'll be easy to identify here again. What's the cause here? Lower interest
Inflation.
rates. This is the inflation is the effect. And since it's a sufficient condition, how do we express this? If there are lower interest rates, then there will be inflation. Now, the moment you arrive at this relationship, again, arriving at this relationship is easy because it's just a contrapositive. And how do you read this? If there is no inflation, it definitely means that there are no lower interest rates. Okay, why only if X or why only when X? Now, what's the new thing here? The presence of only. So actually the presence of only is a very pretty much 100% sure shot indicator that we are now talking about necessary conditions. For example, I use had only when it is sunny. So what's the cause here? First of all, sun, right? Being sunny is the cause and hat is the effect. Does anyone remember how are necessary conditions expressed? If not X, then not Y. Okay, so which means if it is not sunny, then I will not use a hat. Now, the moment you arrive at the original condition, arriving at this condition is quite mechanical. Why? Contrapositive. How do you arrive at contrapositive again? Whatever is on the right, bring it to the left. Whatever is on the left, bring it to the right. Make this negative plus, make this negative plus. And how do you interpret this? If a person is using a hat, it 100% means that it is sunny. All y are x is considered a necessary condition. For example, all successful people are hardworking. All y are x, right? So clearly hard work is the reason and that resulted in them being successful. And since it's a necessary condition, how do we express this? As if not x, then not y, which means if a person, yeah, can you interpret this for me? If a person is not hardworking, Andrews, very nice, then that person cannot be successful. From this, arriving at this, no-brainer. Why no-brainer? Because it's just a contrapositive. And how are contrapositive constructed? Whatever is on the right comes to the left. What is on the left goes to the right. This minus becomes this plus. This minus becomes this plus, which means if a person is successful, it 100% means that the person is hardworking. And finally, only X results in Y is a necessary condition, which by the way, you don't have to remember it separately. We already discussed it that the presence of only in a sentence is a clear indication that we're talking about a necessary condition. So for example, only hard work can result in 700 plus score on GMAT. Again, can you quickly identify what is the cause here? hard work, and 700 plus is the effect. And since it's a necessary condition, how do we express this as friends? Remember, not X, not Y, which means if a person does not work hard, then that person cannot score 700 plus on GMAT. Now, the moment we have this logical relationship, arriving at this relationship is not difficult because it's just a contrapositive. Again, how do we construct contrapositive? Whatever is on the right goes to the left. What is on the left goes to the right. Both these minuses become pluses. All right. Now, notice this one necessary, this one necessary, this one necessary. Friends, since all of these are necessary conditions, what we can do is we have a flexibility to articulate the sentence either in this manner or in this manner or in this manner, because we will not be losing out on anything, because ultimately all these sentences represent a necessary condition, which is what we are saying, right? This one, all y are x, y only if x or only x results in y are all necessary conditions and hence interchangeable. For example, all successful people are hardworking is equivalent to saying, what are we doing here? A person is successful only if, notice this one, we are articulating it in this manner. A person is successful only if he's hardworking, or we can articulate in this way, only hardworking people succeed. So all the three statements are equivalent and all of them represent the necessary condition. Are we clear? Guys, done with theory. Done with theory. Yes. Oh, we'll do a lot of examples in the slides to come. So now actually is the time for us to do some practical application. Let's start with a very easy question, by the way. Let's start with a easy question. I don't even want you to solve this. Since this is the first question, I'll solve it for you. Just focus on understanding the argument. All right, guys. So let's do this. If you have no keyboarding skills at all, you will not be able to use a computer. How do I translate it into a logical relationship? If you have no keyboarding skills at all, then you will not be able to use a computer. Agreed? Okay. If you are not able to use a computer, you will not be able to write your essays using a word processing program. How do I translate it to a logical relationship? If you are not able to use a computer, then you will not be able to write your essays using a word processing program. This is all in terms of the information provided, right? And then the question is just saying if the statements above are true, which of the following must be true? Now notice this, guys. No keyboarding, no computer, no essays. So do you agree we can combine that, right? So what is it saying? No keyboarding, no computer, and no computer, no essays. Agreed? So now that we have this relationship based upon the statements as part of the question, what can we also conclude? The contrapositive. Remember, whenever a relationship is true, the contrapositive is always true. How do we construct contrapositive? We've already seen whatever is on the right goes to the left. What is on the left goes to the right. Minus becomes plus, plus becomes minus. So what will be the contrapositive of this? Essays, computer, keyboarding. Correct? Also, guys, in all these relationships, tell me, does the relationship go from left to right or right to left? What do you think? Left to right, right? It's very clear, right? From this itself, it's clear that the relationship always goes in one direction, which is from left to right. Okay, which of the following must be true? Let's look at alpha. Let's look at alpha. If you have some keyboarding skills, notice some keyboarding skills is this, and the relationship always goes from left to right. But is this relationship going anywhere to the right? Right? In other words, from this, we cannot conclude anything. Right? So alpha is gone. How about Baker? If you are not able to write your essays using a word processing program, not able to write your essays is this. Again, can we conclude anything based on this? No, because it's not going anywhere to the right. So Baker is also gone. So alpha gone, Baker gone. Let's look at Charlie. If you are able to write your essays using a word processing program, able to write your essays using a word processing program, you have at least some keyboarding skills. Absolutely valid. Going from left to right. Okay. Let's look at David. If you are able to use a computer, all right, this is able to use a computer, you will probably be able to write your essays. What's the issue with this? Going from right to left, right? It says if you are able to use a computer, you will probably be able to write your essays. Going from right to left, not allowed. Remember, relationships only go from left to right. And finally, if you are not able to write your essays, notice not able to write your essays. We already discussed it, that this is not going anywhere to the right, and hence we cannot conclude. So what's the right answer finally? Charlie is the right answer. Are we clear? All right. This was an easy one. Now I'm going to leave questions to you to solve it. And let's start with this. So logically, which one? What makes sense? Edward. Edward. Oh, no. No. All the sense that you can make out of Siddharth, we have converted that sense into actual relationships. We use all the sense to convert them into logical relationships. Once you convert it into logical relationships, then you need to go with the logical relationships. In logic, what does it say? If you are not able to write your essays, not able to write your essays is this. David. Oh, Dave. Okay, okay. David. If you are able to use a computer, okay. Now I get it. I get it. First of all, if you are able to use a computer, is this correct? You will probably be able to write your essays. First of all, is going from right to left. That's one thing. Secondly, what does the question say? Which of the following must be true? While this is talking about probably. So that again does not qualify. So the option is probabilities. Yes, yes. While the question is talking about must be true. Okay. Yeah, Bharat. Using a word processing program. Correct. Yes, yes, that's correct. Yes, yes. I actually, yeah, if I were to be very, very clear, then rather than saying this, I should have written this. Essays using a word processing program. I think that should be yes. When I say not be able to write your essays, according to the sentence, it means not able to write your essays using a word processing. So you are absolutely correct in your yes. Yes. Yeah. Correct. So it does not mean that you cannot write your essays at all on a piece of paper also. That's the reason I said I think I should have added WP here, word processing. Yes. Okay. Never worry if you don't get the question correct in the class. Don't worry at all, but give your best shot. So which of the following statements can be inferred from the passage? What do you guys think? Yes, friends. Everyone for Baker? All right. Now let's look at eliminating some options. Why is alpha not correct? No mention of quality or improvement. So alpha is gone straight away. Okay. Why is Charlie not correct? Nothing about funding is mentioned, right? Okay. How about David? Why not David? David is actually, in fact, quite tempting.
I was thinking it's David, but over here it's written, however, since public criticism of childcare services has undermined all confidence in the services, which means that maybe even after voicing out publicly, policy strongly voiced, the government is not taking enough stand to respond. So that is why I was thinking D might not be the case.
Okay. Yeah, why not David? Any other reason? Now, actually, if you look at it, tell me, when does the government respond, guys? When this happens. When there is public criticism of socially necessary services, the government responds. Agreed? How strong should that criticism be? It doesn't mention. Absolutely. Right? While what David is saying is, if public criticism is strongly voiced, that is when the government responds. So I would say strongly is a big culprit here. Okay. Now we are left between Baker and Edward. Baker is the right answer. Why? Well, actually, it flows straight from the argument, right? Now, notice what's happening. What's happening? The argument says that when there is a public criticism, what happens? Very nice. Regulation. And then what does the argument say? Governments inevitably make the activity, so regulation leads to that activity becoming more expensive. Correct? And now, what is the argument further saying? Public criticism is happening for what? Childcare services. Since public criticism is happening for childcare services, which means what will happen? Government will respond. And how does the government respond? Regulation. Very nice. So, which means childcare services, according to the argument, will be regulated. And because childcare services are regulated, what will happen? Absolutely. And that's exactly what Baker is saying. Cost of providing childcare services will increase. All right. Now, why not Edward? We are only left with Edward. Why not Edward? Now, the thing is, notice this is what the argument says clearly, that if childcare services are regulated, then the cost of providing childcare services will increase. When a statement is true, when a logical relationship is true, what is also mechanically true? Contrapositive, right? When the relationship is true, the contrapositive is always true. Can someone tell me what will be the contrapositive of this? Very nice. If cost of providing childcare services does not increase, it clearly means that childcare services have not been regulated. So far, we are fine. But from this, remember we discussed that you cannot conclude this. So which means from this, what can you not conclude? Yes, from this, what can you not conclude? Yeah. So if childcare services are not regulated, then cost of providing childcare services will not increase. We cannot conclude. But that's exactly what Edward is saying. If childcare services are not regulated, the cost of providing childcare services will not. So this is something that we already discussed. We cannot conclude. All right. Okay. So Baker is the right answer. Now, notice this is what I was talking about, that this question, by the way, is not a critical reasoning question per se. Again, since some of you, in fact, a lot of you are prepared for GMAT, this is actually a data insights question, which is through and thorough using the concepts of critical reasoning. Now, I'm hoping you at least understand the logistics of this. So basically, uh, for this blank, this one, right? You have to choose one of these. And similarly, for this blank, again, you have to choose one of these. So that's how it works out, guys. Okay, all right, all righty. Now, what Siddharth is saying is, can you repeat? Okay. Okay. What do you guys think? Okay, all right. Now, tell me what's the if condition that the argument or the question statement tells you? What's the if condition? Very nice. This one, correct? If we find that A's campaign elicits positive responses from the focus group, we will not ask B for the campaign. So this is how you obviously depict in terms of logical relationship, right? That if A's campaign elicits positive response, then we will not ask B for a campaign, correct? Now, the moment the original relationship is true, what is also always mechanically true? The contrapositive. So what will be the contrapositive of this? We already discussed it, right? Multiple times now, whatever is on the right goes to the left, what is on the left goes to the right, minus becomes plus, plus becomes minus. So if we ask B for a campaign, it means that A's campaign has not elicited positive response. And notice this is exactly what the passage is also saying. If the company asks B for a campaign, it must be the case, it 100% must be the case that the company believes that the focus group did not respond positively to A's campaign. Very nice, Siddharth. Are we clear? All right, good. Oh, by the way, again, it's a data insights question. Completely utilizing the concepts of critical reasoning. Which one? All right, all right. Very, very nice. Now, actually, one thing is obviously that this question, right, the statement itself is clearly asking you for a relationship between legal and code of ethics. And notice the very first sentence directly addresses that, right? All actions that are permissible under the code of ethics are also legal. Now, does it remind you of something, by the way? Does it remind you of something that we discussed? All successful people are hardworking. Do you remember that? Right? And we identified that, if you remember, as a necessary condition. So, by the way, what I've also done is I've depicted it in terms of a Venn diagram, but you don't need to worry about it right now. So, and if you remember, we also discussed this, that all y are x, y only if x, and only x results in y. Since all of them represent necessary conditions, they are interchangeable. Correct? So similarly, all actions, notice this one, all actions that are permissible are legal, is equivalent to what? Remember, all successful people are hardworking. This can also be represented as a person is successful only if he is hardworking. Similarly, all actions that are permissible are legal will be equivalent to what? An action is permissible only if it is legal. And hence, as you guys rightly pointed out, only if is the only one that fits into this. Good. Okay. Oh, by the way, yeah. So this brings us to our book. Everything that I've discussed so far in terms of logical reasoning, what we've also done is uh, so notice there we have a chapter here on logic, which discusses everything that we've discussed, obviously in much more detail with a lot of other examples also. So that would be my expectation, by the way, throughout critical reasoning classes. You do not need to do any pre-reading, but once you've covered a concept here, then you go back and read the corresponding chapter because it'll just reinforce the concept that we discuss in the class. So that's the expectation, guys. But is it possible that only the readings provided by this, we don't need any other? Oh yeah, the reading. I mean, obviously, if when yeah. I mean, this this book, and obviously with the classes, they are sufficient. Yeah. And by the way, this is not just true for critical reasoning. My intent is to cover. We are quite comprehensive with the entire. So actually, the thing is, again, for those of you who've given GMAT, they would know that GMAT, the organization that conducts GMAT, they also have their books. Those are called official guides, OGs. The and nothing is better than them, by the way. But they are largely like in our high school, what we used to do as PYQs, previous year question papers. So they are basically old retired GMAT questions. So that compilation is there. But we provide a soft copy of those as part of the course. So you don't need actually anything else. Book does not contain OG questions. Book does not. Yeah, book does not contain OG questions. Oh, by the way, what I have taken the liberty of is that the book does have full length question, not many, but a few. What I've taken the liberty of is that I've actually provided reference that this question is based on XYZ official question, but we cannot reproduce the questions. No, just some a few more minutes. Yeah, we can discuss. Yeah. So, but the good thing is, the toughest part is over. So now we'll have some good fun time with the cause and effect reasoning. Now, a cause makes the effect happen. I think all of you would know. So you can recognize a cause-effect relationship typically by the following cause-effect markers. And what are the markers? Hence, because of, leads to, caused by, consequently, an effect of, produced by. So all these are cause-effect markers. So that's how you know that a cause-effect relationship is being presented. Now, this is the number one way in which GMAT tries to confuse you. It tries to mix up causation with correlation. So we've already discussed what causation is. So causation essentially means that one thing causes another. But what's correlation? Correlation is simply a relationship wherein action A relates to action B, but one event does not necessarily cause the other thing to happen. So that's the difference between causation and correlation. An example that I've given here is that sunny weather causes the tendency to eat ice cream. Sunny weather causes sunburns. But as far as eating ice cream and sunburns go, they are merely what? Correlated. They coexist. But just because they coexist, we cannot conclude that there is a causal relationship between the two. In other words, eating ice cream does not cause sunburns. Getting sunburns does not cause eating ice cream. So that's how they are correlated. So there is a correlation between eating ice cream and getting sunburns because the two events are related, but neither event causes the other. Instead, both these events are caused by something else. And what is that something else? Sunny weather. All right. So let's do a lot of practice on this, starting with this question. So this is the argument. People in US consume a lot of meat. That's a fact. Incidents of obesity are highest in the US. So can you tell me what are the two things that go together? What are the two things that go together? Obesity and meat. Just because these two things go together, what is the argument concluding? Meat causes obesity. And let us say your task is to challenge. Okay, no, that's fine, I think. So let's say your task is to challenge this causal relationship. That's your task. You understand what I'm saying? So the argument is concluding that meat causes obesity and your task is to challenge this causal relationship. Now, how can you challenge the causal relationship? One way you can challenge it is with this option that as one grows obese, craving for meat increases. Now, tell me what are the two things that go together here? What are the two things that go together? Meat and obesity, correct? Now, meat and obesity can go together either when meat results in obesity or obesity results in meat. In both the cases, they will coexist. Argument is concluding that meat causes obesity and we are supposed to challenge it. So what would challenge it? If we prove that the relationship is the other way around. So an option that says that if whereas one grows obese, craving for meat increases clearly is challenging the causal relationship between meat and obesity. Another way to challenge this would be third factor results in both the factors. Lack of intent for physical activity makes it convenient to consume ready-to-eat meat products, and lack of physical activity is also associated with causing obesity. So now notice what does this option do? It is introducing a third factor that results in both the factors. So lack of intent for physical activity makes it convenient to consume meat. Lack of intent for physical activity causes obesity. If this is the case, then meat and obesity are merely correlated. So which means this statement again, what does it do? It takes away the causal relationship between these two factors. And hence, this option as well as this option, what would they do? They would challenge the causal relationship established by the original argument. Yeah.
To say, let's say if the yours was if meat then obesity was given in the question.
No. So I think that's the confusion. If meat, then obesity is not given in the question. It was the conclusion of the question. What was given was, by the way, this. This was given. And this is the conclusion.
When it's coming to meat, then obesity.
Yes.
Affects then that.
Yes. Meat causes obesity.
If Y then X is one possible option, the other one will be if Z then Y.
All these would be correct. But here, that's not our goal. We are supposed, this is a statement that I am giving you, the question statement, that you are supposed to just challenge this causal relationship. So what I'm saying is that this causal relationship, which I have expressed diagrammatically like this, can be challenged either through this or through this. That's all. And let's.
The third one is where the third factor is causing Y.
Third factor is causing both of these, by the way.
That I'm considering lack of physical activity, X being meat in this case. Would that?
All right. Okay. Fair enough. I mean, you could do that, and we'll see that in the coming classes. So what Jay is saying is, how about this? So you are saying that lack of intent, lack of physical activity, right? Lack of physical activity, correct? Physical activity is the reason for obesity. That's what you're saying, right? Yes, absolutely. So, correct. So, agreed. If lack of physical activity, then obesity will definitely challenge the causal relationship between two. But the only thing that this does not do is, just 1 second, guys. The only thing that this does not do is it is not able to reconcile how meat and obesity coexist. Right? See, if you're saying lack of physical activity is causing obesity, I'm saying that it's not reconciling how meat and obesity coexist, which was given to us as a fact, by the way, as part of the argument. While these two options do take that case into account. All right. That's it.
Factor in this, that is like, suppose here the correlation is that people consume a lot of incidence of obesity is highest in US. Can I add an argument saying that people who consume meat and people who are obese are not in the same category?
Okay.
I have one question to Ashish.
Yeah, Rishi.
So let's say if I don't consider physical activity into this aspect, but
If I
considering
don't
the
consider
first
what?
the physical activity in the second
Physical
point,
activity.
right?
Yes.
And
yes.
if I see the argument, it is said people in the US consume a lot of meat. So what if I said that because meat was so easily available or people consume more and that causes obesity? That can also be an argument, right?
Yeah. So why do they consume meat? Because it's available at a cheap
In
price.
abundance, yeah, in abundance
Correct.
or at a price.
Yes,
That will
but
still challenge the
how is it
obesity
challenging?
because it's easily available. I consume a lot and I get obese.
Right. So what you are saying is that meat, let's say cheap, right? Let's say
Yeah.
meat is cheap. Let's say very cheap. Let's put very cheap. Very
Okay.
cheap. And that's the reason people consume meat, and that's the reason they are obese. That is not really challenging this relationship, right? It is just bringing this thing into factor, but it's not challenging the causal relationship between meat and obesity. Ishi, do you agree?
Got it.
He's just saying, why do people consume a lot of meat? But it's
Got
not
it.
challenging that. Okay, now we come to Siddharth's point, which is very interesting. What he's saying is, okay, how about this, Siddharth? How about this? Maybe it's not a perfect answer. How about if I add everyone here? Everyone in US consumes a lot of meat. Incidents of obesity are the highest in US. Then what do you think about your argument? Yeah, see, because, okay, by the way, Siddharth had a very good observation. So what he was saying was that people in US do consume a lot of meat and obesity is the highest. That's also fact. But what Siddharth was saying was that, let's say, well, just for the sake of argument, suppose this is the total population of US. Uh, Although I would actually agree with you, in fact, now that I think about it, what Siddharth is saying is, how about this? An option that says that these are the people who consume meat in US and these are the people who are obese. Now notice, if this is the distribution, then you clearly cannot say that meat is the reason for obesity. So I would actually agree with you. Yes, good point actually. Yes. Are we clear? Okay. Yes, Bharat.
So we have to challenge
Correct. We have to challenge this.
to prove that obesity leads to eating more meat, then it will be challenging.
Correct.
You are telling that X leads to Y.
No, X leads to Y is what this is saying. And what this option is saying is Y leads to X. No, this is not contrapositive, by the way. This is not a contra, this has nothing to do with contrapositive. Y leads to. Oh, by the way, this is, first of all, I want to be very clear, everyone, that this is not contrapositive. If X, then Y, the contrapositive of this is not this. The contrapositive is if not Y, then not X. So this has nothing to do with the contrapositive concept, Bharat, first of all. This is given that X leads to Y. Yes. We cannot conclude that. Yes, we cannot conclude that. Got it. Got it. Got it. One second. If it is given that X leads to Y, okay, if this is given as true, then from this, what can you not conclude? I cannot conclude this. Yeah, I mean, I cannot conclude that, right? First of all, do you agree? Right? When can I not conclude this, by the way? If it is given that this is true. Are you guys with me? Here it is not given that this is true. In fact, we have to challenge this. Do you understand the difference, Bharat? Yes. So on the basis of this, I cannot conclude this if this is given as true. Here, argument is concluding this, and we have to challenge this conclusion. Absolutely. If we prove if we prove perhaps might be a strong word. If it is given that Y leads to X, this clearly means that this is not true. Got it? So good questions, guys. Good questions. Okay.
First thing, that conclusion that is given is X causes Y.
Yes.
When I'm trying to challenge that X thing is causing Y, the third point is stating that both should, like this third factor which is said, should cause both.
Are causing. Yes.
Both of them. But like ideally, even if Z causes Y, that in itself is challenging. I don't necessarily need to prove X.
Agree. Again, you're going back to the same point, and I agree with that. My only point was that if we are saying that, I'll go back again. Oops, how did the color change? That lack of physical activity causes obesity. Lack of physical activity causes obesity is definitely challenging this relationship, and I agree with you to that extent. I am saying that lack of intent for physical activity causes obesity is not just reconciling the point that if that is the case, then how do meat and obesity go together? Yes, which is given to us as a fact in the argument.
So if an option in this question, let's say we were given challenge undermine the conclusion lead cause obesity.
Yes.
If the option said that lack of intent of physical activity causes obesity,
correct.
That is incorrect.
So yeah, so in the next slide, so this is a very valid way, by the way, to challenge. But let's discuss it in the next class in terms of when exactly is this option correct. Okay. Now I think you would get a hang because all of these are the same patterns. This is given to you. Many people in this city have a bad headache and nausea. So tell me, what are the two things that are coexisting? Headache and nausea. On the basis of this, what now, mind you, this is given to you us as a fact. And what is the conclusion? Nausea. So actually, this is a great discussion we are having, because in all critical reasoning questions, guys, and we'll start critical reasoning formally from the next class, you never challenge the facts. You always challenge the conclusion. All right. And the conclusion here is nausea is caused by headache. Nausea is caused by headache. And this is the conclusion that we have to challenge. So again, one way to challenge this is an option that says that nausea causes some hormones to be released, causing headache, which means, what are we saying? That the actual relationship is the other way around. So that would challenge this causal relationship, or an option that says a strain of flu that is currently ravaging the city causes headache and also causes nausea. So now what is this option doing? It is essentially establishing a correlation between headache and nausea, which means, again, this option is challenging the causal relationship between headache and nausea. Same thing. Mr. Gupta's family is dysfunctional. It's no surprise that their child Rajat has behavioral problems. So basically, this conclusion is saying that dysfunctional family is the reason for behavioral problems of Rajat. Again, we have to challenge this. So how do we challenge it? The opposite is true, which means behavioral problems in family members often result in dysfunctional families. So this is saying that the relationship is the other way around. Or a third factor, a family trauma few years back led to means caused behavioral problems among few family members, and also resulted in Mr. Gupta's dysfunctional family. So again, I think by now the pattern should be clear. We are introducing third factor as the cause for these two factors, which means dysfunctional family and behavioral problems are now merely correlated and there is no causal relationship. Doc, this I think you would find to be very facetious, honestly, and I think hopefully funny. Doctors have found high sugar levels in most murder convicts in the Oregon County. So what are the two things that go together? High sugar levels and murder convicts. On the basis of this, what is the argument concluding? Consumption of sugar increases the propensity or the tendency to murder. So sugar consumption causes a tendency to murder. And again, what do we have to do? Challenge this causal relationship. So how do we challenge it? Well, one good way to challenge it would be this option, which says after committing such ghastly crimes as murder, murderers often feel drained out and crave on sugar. So which means sugar was not the reason why they murdered. Murder was the reason why they crave on sugar. Okay, 15 years back, prices of real estate fell sharply. This was soon followed by economic recession. Prices of real estate are now falling. And what's the conclusion? Economic recession is about to follow. So prices of real estate falling is an indication that economic recession is about to follow. And we have to challenge this. So how do we challenge it? A third factor results in both the factors. The federal bank sharply increased interest rates, leading to fall in real estate prices and also economic recession. So which means we are establishing a correlation. Believe it or not, one way in which we can challenge this causal relationship is through this coincidence. It fails to address. It fails to address means the original argument fails to adequately address the possibility that one phenomena may closely follow another by coincidence. See, what happened here, as per the argument, was once 15 years back. What happened once 15 years back could have been a coincidence. Could have been a coincidence. And by the way, all the options that I have here, all the questions that I have here are motivated by official questions. So these are real answers in actual questions. So you need to be aware of all of these. See, if something happened, right? Notice prices of real estate fell sharply. This was soon followed by economic recession. If this had happened, let's say 10 times in the past, then it's very difficult for you to dismiss it as a coincidence. But if this is something that happened perhaps just once 15 years back, could have been a coincidence as well. All right. Okay, this is the last slide, and I'm pretty sure you guys would be able to understand here the ridiculous extent to which causal relationships can go. For example, Japan is surrounded by the sea. Per capita income of Japan is the highest in the world. So, what are the two things that go together? Surrounded by sea and per capita income. Just because these two things go together, what is the argument concluding? The more the water around you, the more the likelihood of higher per capita income. This is clearly doing what wrong? It is converting a correlation into a causation. It's force fitting a causation. It's basically saying that the reason Japan has the highest per capita income is because it is surrounded by the sea. That's not the case. These are just correlated, while the conclusion is trying to force fit a causal relationship between the two. Similarly, Siberia is among the coldest places on Earth. That's a fact. Penetration of electric vehicles is among the lowest in Siberia. Again, a fact. On the basis of these facts, what is the argument concluding? Clearly, atmospheric temperatures are directly proportional to the willingness of people to adopt electric vehicles, which means higher the temperature, uh, more the inclination of people to adopt electric vehicles. Again, or lower the temperature, lesser the tendency. So again, what is the argument doing? It's trying to force fit a causal relationship between the temperatures and the willingness to adopt electric vehicles, while this is merely a correlation. Now, this one I think you should be able to figure out. In the local park, a group of elderly conducts laughter exercise. A recent medical examination revealed that all these elders had anxiety issues. So from this, what is the argument concluding? What is the argument concluding? What do you guys think about it?
Yeah,
What do you guys think
laughter is causing the anxiety issues. Is
Do you
what
think
they're
that's the
stating.
case? Yeah,
No.
that's what they are stating. Absolutely. That's what they are
No.
stating.
Not necessarily.
Absolutely. What is perhaps happening is the other way around. Because these elders had anxiety issues, for that reason they are indulging in laughter exercise. That is a case what makes most sense. Again, so this is again a causal relationship gone wrong, right? It was supposed to be the other way around. So that, friends, brings us to the end of the class.